André Rieu's health eventually caught up with him at the age of 74, forcing him to postpone a number of eagerly awaited shows, leaving fans in Mexico City devastated. Rieu's son has stepped forward to assume leadership of the enormous company he has spent decades creating as a result of this sudden change in his traveling schedule. It's difficult to understand that the man who had owned an incredible 80 properties and did an incredible 100 shows annually could need to think about retiring, especially because he had always boldly stated that he would continue to play until he was 140. His final show in Maestro, where he started his musical career, has a profound impact and feels like a moving farewell to both his admirers and his incredible career. Rieu was born in 1949 in the small Dutch village of Maestro and was raised in a musically inclined but cold home. As a strict conductor of the Maastricht Symphony Orchestra, his father placed a higher value on discipline than anything else, frequently overshadowing the love and support that one would anticipate in a loving family setting. Rieu's unwavering work ethic and commitment to music were influenced by this difficult background, helping to shape him into the captivating entertainer he is now. His legacy continues to inspire innumerable musicians and fans worldwide as an era comes to an end. As the third of 6 children, André's household felt less like a loving home and more like a rigid military camp. Growing up, there wasn't much love or support. His parents were devout Roman Catholics who only cared about following the rules and maintaining silence. They didn't let friends over, and there wasn't much laughter. André genuinely believed what he stated when he added, "My parents didn't love me very much." His innate eagerness didn't sit well with his parents' aloof demeanor from an early age. His mother disliked it when teachers referred to him as an artist since she was so focused on getting excellent grades and practicing music. André felt invisible as a result, unless he was performing his duties flawlessly. He tried to understand why his upbringing felt so empty for years in therapy. However, it's possible that this emptiness inspired him to alter the perception of classical music. He experienced an unexpected event when he was 5 years old. His violin teacher captured his heart. She was gorgeous, blonde, and 18. She was so distracting that he could hardly concentrate in class. However, she encouraged him to practice daily. Scales didn't matter to him, or methods. All he wanted to do was play like her. He saw her motions, her hands, and the way she brought music to life. André was already grasping the subtleties of music's emotions in a matter of weeks, while others were still having difficulty. For him that was important. Emotion, not flawlessness. His connection with his father became much more strained as he grew older. André had no desire to perform the somber, inflexible classical compositions. His goal was to create dynamic and enjoyable music. That was disrespectful to his father. His father retorted, "I didn't raise you to play waltzes," when André expressed his desire to play waltzes. It was a hard hit. When André presented his future wife Marjorie to his family, things became worse. Rather than extending a kind greeting, his mother instructed Marjorie to go and told André to return to his neat room as if he were still a child. The final straw was that, after taking Marjorie, he departed, never turning around. Even though he was performing in large venues all around the world after that, his parents never attended any of his shows. He never saw what André had accomplished when his father died in 1992. André, meanwhile, was formulating a scheme in the midst of all that rejection. He was performing in his father's orchestra when he became aware of something strange. The majority of the musicians appeared uninterested in the music. Instead, they were discussing the weather. They had grievances regarding their compensation. It was dead. Then, however, something extraordinary occurred during the encore. A Strauss waltz would be played by the orchestra. The audience came alive all of a sudden. People grinned. They hummed. The vibe shifted. André realized then that this was the type of music he wanted to perform, to move people, not to win over detractors. He performed a gentle serenade for a dying woman one day, who had gone days without opening her eyes. However, she opened them as the music entered the room. André realized the actual power of music at that precise moment. It was about feeling, not about being flawless. At that point, the notion of forming his own orchestra began to take shape. André began modestly in 1978 when he was 29 years old, had a newborn kid at home, and had little money to spare. He assembled a small group of musicians to establish the Maastricht Salon Orchestra. Anywhere they could, they played. Town halls, weddings, and border towns close to Belgium and Germany. They performed salon music and vintage waltzes that most people had forgotten. It wasn't glitzy. André didn't care that they weren't earning much money. He was engaged in his passion. He once played the Gold and Silver Waltz by Franz Lehous during a brief recital. Something changed when he put all of his heart into it. He felt as though the music was responding to him. He made the decision that night that this was his destiny. It was cheesy, but it didn't matter to him. If the elite laughed, it didn't matter to him. He thought that classical music could be happy, and he wouldn't stop until he thought that everyone else did too. André Rieu found himself in a pivotal moment in 1987. He was almost 40. I had nearly 10 years of experience as the conductor of the Maastricht Salon Orchestra. However, something didn't feel right. The thrill had vanished. The boundaries were obvious. Additionally, the previous format was no longer sufficient. Something larger was what he desired. He wanted to do more than just perform music. He desired to work magic. When Johann Strauss himself played the violin and conducted, his entire body moved in time with the rhythm. Others used to experience the same type of joy and spectacle, that vitality, that enjoyment, that feeling of life. It wasn't an easy choice, but Rieu wanted to bring it back. It was a huge risk to start something fresh. He wasn't wealthy, and paying professional musicians meant actual money. He put greater financial strain on himself with each musician he hired. Classical music wasn't exactly known for taking chances, and reservations weren't certain, but he felt deep down that he had to give it a shot. The Johann Strauss Orchestra, his new brainchild, played its inaugural concert on January 1, 1988. Even though there were just 12 musicians and a tiny audience, something about the event felt unique. Rieu disregarded the guidelines. The orchestra was not dressed in the customary black. He didn't maintain a formal silent stage. He introduced theatrical flair, dramatic lighting, folk music, and laughing. It was unpopular with critics. They referred to it as gimmicky and cheap. However, the audience cheered, grinned, and participated. Rieu was determined not to let go of the spark he had discovered. Then came the turning point in the story. The Champions League final was held in Vienna in May 1995. While Bayern Munich and the Ajax were fighting, an odd incident occurred at halftime. Shostakovich's second waltz was played by Rieu and his orchestra as they took the field. A TV ad had made the song well known to Dutch viewers, but none anticipated what would happen next. The 50,000 football fans in the stadium began to sway, hum, and lose themselves in the music. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. Throughout Europe, 300 million people saw the event live thanks to cameras. It was a cultural shockwave rather than merely a halftime spectacle. During the next few weeks, 200,000 CDs were sold by Rieu. The previous year's release of the album Strauss & Company was abruptly a hit. It became the best-selling album in the Netherlands for the entire decade after spending 19 weeks at the top of the charts. Now, people who had never been interested in classical music were purchasing his recordings, attending his performances, and becoming enamored with his waltzes. That football game is still cited by music scholars as the turning point for André Rieu, who went beyond being a violinist. Not everyone was ecstatic, but he became a movement. The world of classical music retaliated forcefully. They accused him of converting centuries-old music into a circus, dubbed him a charlatan, and claimed he was killing tradition. A well-known conductor even referred to his performances as musical erotica in one harsh assessment. The large sets, the simpler arrangements, the theatrical gags, and the vibrant costumes were all despised by the critics. When Rieu constructed a model of Vienna's Schönbrunn Palace in 2008, the situation became even more heated. Horses, ice rinks, and fountains, all for the stage's background. It was horrifying to purists and cost $34 million. Rieu didn't give up, though. He felt that everyone, not just concert hall pros, should be able to enjoy music. He wanted everyone, children, parents, teachers, housekeepers, to appreciate the same music that was previously restricted by rigid customs. And it was difficult to deny the reality. He was adored by millions of fans. They attended his concerts in large numbers, danced in the aisles, and purchased numerous albums. Although Strauss and crew had already created a stir in 1994, their performance in 1995 put them on a whole new level. Within months, 150,000 copies were sold in the Netherlands alone. It broke into the top 5 on the German charts, which is unprecedented for classical music. Over 3 million copies had been sold worldwide by the time it reached its peak. In important European regions, it outsold some of the biggest pop stars, such as Bon Jovi and Celine Dion. Because of him, even major record stores began to give classical music more shelf space. It was dubbed the Rieu effect by industry insiders. His albums were more profitable than those of any other classical performer, according to Universal Music. He was reinventing the industry in addition to creating music. All of this resulted from his one bold choice in 1987 to name his band after Johann Strauss, which many perceived as being conceited. He eventually disproved them though. He didn't take Strauss's place. He brought him back to life. The waltzes of Strauss were becoming less popular in the 1980s. They were hardly being played. However, Rieu was largely responsible for the 16-fold rise in Strauss's music performances by 2010. He had well over 60 musicians in his orchestra, compared to merely 12 at the beginning, bigger than Strauss's own group. Rieu expressed his profound appreciation for Strauss in a tribute album he issued in 1999 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of his passing. For preserving the nation's musical legacy, the Austrian government even gave him one of their greatest national honors. André Rieu transformed classical music into a worldwide phenomenon. He performed something in 2008 that nobody saw coming from a violinist. He constructed and toured a massive model of the Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna. We are discussing a full-scale castle that accompanied him on his global travels. It was more than a background. It included authentic chandeliers, ice rinks, fountains, and even Vienna-style horse-drawn carriages. The Rolling Stones had never constructed anything as large as this. It wasn't merely for show either. Rieu wanted people to experience the enchantment of Vienna, who would never have the funds to travel there. The logistics were crazy. It took 100 men 6 days to erect the stage each time he set up, but it was worthwhile. Stadiums in Australia and Europe were crowded. His performance broke the record for the largest classical concert ever staged in Australia, with 38,605 people packing the Telstra Dome in Melbourne alone. Nearly 90,000 people attended his 3 performances in that city, and he was selling out arenas in Europe at the same rate. His DVDs dominated the charts in Australia at one point, taking 8 of the top 10 positions. Only AC/DC and Pink were able to enter covertly. This wasn't just a lucky run. Rieu shared the stage with celebrities like Madonna and the Police, and his performances became so successful that he was included in the top 10 list of the highest-grossing tours in the world. This is quite amazing for the king of the waltz, and if that wasn't enough, he won more than 500 platinum medals from the sales of his albums and DVDs, more than any other classical artist has ever done. Universal Music gave him a personalized chrome violin trophy to commemorate this accomplishment, claiming that his degree of success was unheard of in the music business. Not everything, though, was flawless. What was supposed to be a joyous Christmas tour in the UK was marred by tragedy in 2016. While the orchestra was in Leeds, Ruud Merckx, Rieu's long-standing trombonist, suffered a sudden cardiac attack while he was asleep. He had spent over 2 decades in Rieu's group. He was accompanied by his wife, who was also an orchestra member. 2 kids were waiting for them at home. The group was deeply affected by the occurrence. Rieu took swift action, postponing the rest of the UK tour shortly after cancelling the Nottingham gig that evening. Performances in London, Birmingham, Manchester and Glasgow were removed from the schedule. Family, Rieu said of his orchestra. He really did mean it. It was devastating for many members who had been with him for more than 25 years to lose one of their own just before Christmas. 5 days after being flown back to the Netherlands, Merckx died. A change was noticeable when Rieu finally made his way back to the UK in March. Although the audiences were smaller, the magic persisted. He too remembered what had happened in December. André Rieu had spent decades using his music to captivate people all across the world. However, his return to Mexico City in March 2024 almost overtook him. He toured the world at the age of 74 with the energy of a man half his age until his body suddenly failed him. A severe case of flu, high altitude, and jet lag caused André to collapse after just 2 performances. Mexico City's high elevation, more than 2,000 meters above sea level, pushed him to the limit. Even his orchestra members suffered from exhaustion and nosebleeds. André found it more difficult. In his own words, he said he felt 100 years old and was experiencing fever and vertigo. Backstage that night, he contacted his wife and said something he had never spoken before: "I no longer want my first concert day to be like this." For the first time, the unstoppable performer admitted that he might need to relax. The shows were cancelled. The man who had always taken pride in never missing a show had to go back home after disappointing 40,000 people. This wasn't just a passing warning. For years, André had been suffering from his sickness. He lost his balance due to a viral infection in his inner ear in 2010, which interrupted his tour and took months to recover from. In 2019, he even performed without disclosing that he had a high fever, maybe, but probably never again. Pierre was no longer just a manager of a company. He was now responsible for protecting his father. He had gradually relieved André of his burden over the years by managing the crew, logistics, and maintaining order. André used to want to be in charge of everything. He now had total faith in Pierre. Every near miss and health concern had strengthened their friendship, and Pierre had taken on the role of shield behind the scenes. The fine followed. André was given a severe sentence by the Dutch government, £236,000, alleging that kids had worked above the hours that were permitted for minors. Even though it was later lowered, it remains one of the biggest cultural fines in Dutch history. André's group retaliated. They claimed that after 11 p.m., the kids didn't really perform. During the curtain call, they simply returned to the stage to wave. In a technical sense, Zamfir, not André, was in charge of those children. The court ultimately sided with him after 2 years of legal fights. He also subtly provided 700 tons of steel to restore Notre Dame Cathedral after it caught fire. Silent actions that showed a side of him that wasn't always well known. His priceless Stradivarius comes next. He almost had to sell it at one point due to financial difficulties. To keep it safe, he offered it for a ridiculous price, and he removed it off the market after circumstances improved. That violin is a part of him, not just a piece of wood. He now securely delivers a rare 1732 model he plays everywhere. His wife, Marjorie, was always there behind the glitz, penning orchestral music without ever claiming credit. Instead of being in the spotlight, her art thrives in the music. Marjorie remained in the background while André rose to prominence. When the traditional realm of classical music ceased to inspire him, he was pushed to create something new by molding the sound and directing the vision. She also pushed for the pair to make one of their most audacious decisions to date, purchasing a castle that was centuries old. The phone call was unexpected. When it occurred, they were on vacation. The echoes of music and the murmurs of family decisions that shaped the empire can still be heard inside. The following generation is now entering that environment. Daisy, André's 9-year-old granddaughter, is already practicing on the piano with the orchestra. It's not an advertising gimmick. The Rieu heritage operates in this way, subtly, gradually, via skill and love. André understands the significance of having a musical upbringing. Just as her father Pierre did, Daisy is now living it as well. You were in the proper place if you wanted to cry, clap, or sing. He was warning audiences by the late 2010s not to bother with ball dresses unless they intended to spin around in them. People adored him for transforming the symphony into a party. Most classical concerts used to feel more like lectures than actual performances. Stiff clothing, silent crowds, and strict regulations that may result in a severe glare if you simply clapped at the wrong moment. Rieu detested that. Rieu went viral when several detractors criticized his presentation for being too informal. His rendition of Danny Boy in Dublin not only attracted admirers, but also went viral, garnering millions of views akin to a music video that topped the charts. His talent, however, lay in how he used the internet, not just in accessing it. The tour's stops each had music, themes, and substance that were unique to that place. He included supporters in the act rather than just inviting them. Every detail, including surveys, advance looks, parties, and rewards, was carefully organized. It was no longer just about the music, it was also about bringing back memories, stirring feelings, and letting the audience become lost in his vision. The cinema theaters themselves had to adapt. Rigid attitudes and enforced silence were things of the past. Customers could now relax, eat, and drink, making the evening feel more like a party than just a movie screening. Rieu identified a basic reality. People are looking for genuine experiences, and he provided them. Critics were scathing at first, but the background of André Rieu is far more nuanced, more than the honors imply. A man who underwent years of treatment in an effort to heal the wounds caused by an emotionally distant father can be found beneath the lavish performances and crowded settings. His father never really saw him, never took delight in him, and never recognized his violin playing. André was so deeply saddened that he decided not to attend his father's burial. He saw his sibling flee to another nation as a child, in order to escape the same emotional turmoil. André gained a fresh perspective and useful tools from his therapy. He no longer prioritizes lofty ideals above real investments. Even while his on-stage presence still shines, that event changed him and made him more cautious. André is getting ready for a big event as he approaches his 75th birthday. A final grand farewell, perhaps. In what feels more like a farewell than a celebration, he plans to return to his hometown of Maastricht for a series of concerts. Show cancellations and concerns about how long he can continue are already concerning signs from his health. To stay sharp, he travels with a personal trainer and pays close attention to his sleep schedule. He is a strong proponent of music's therapeutic benefits. Many, including medical professionals, have told him that his concerts are therapeutic. Maybe that's why he won't quit. André Rieu sees each note he plays as a way to give back, a way to stay young, and a way to move past the hurt of his childhood.